Raspberry Pis are getting expensive, and in some places, you can't even buy them. Did you know that there are more powerful options from other companies, sometimes for much cheaper? I've put out some videos on loading network services on Raspberry Pis. Along the way, I've had some people comment that Raspberry Pis are prohibitively expensive where they are, or that they're just not available at all. Even in markets where Raspberry Pis are readily available, the prices have been on the way up. It's not just the worldwide RAM shortage. Thanks, AI companies. It's also Raspberry Pi Holdings deciding that their road to profitability went through price increases. Some people have suggested using small form factor PCs or use servers. That's fine, especially if you have larger home lab aspirations. But there are plenty of instances where a cheap single board computer, or SBC, is more appropriate. And there are so many SBCs. Welcome back to Dad Explains Everything. Today I'm covering the experience of working with an alternative to the ubiquitous Raspberry Pi offerings. Raspberry Pis are built around Broadcom CPUs, but there are plenty of other options built around Rockchip, Amlogic, and even Intel CPUs. Excluding the x64 chips, the rest use CPUs composed of very similar ARM or RISC-V cores, powering boards from Odroid, Orange Pi, Banana Pi, Libre, Radxa, and more. More choices create price competition and more opportunities to get exactly what you want. It also creates market confusion and an uncertain documentation and support environment for consumers. As far as SBCs go, Raspberry Pis are the most approachable, especially with novices, but today I'll demystify an alternative, showing you exactly how to get it loaded and ready for your projects. This is a Radxa Zero 3W. It looks an awful lot like a Raspberry Pi Zero 2W, at least on the outside. But check this out. For $22, I got this 1GB Radxa Zero 3W from AliExpress. It's got double the RAM, roughly double the CPU capability, a better GPU, some NPU, and generally better connectivity. On paper, this thing destroys a Raspberry Pi Zero 2W. It's better than a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus too, which is my standby for light SBC applications that don't require USB 3.0. Speaking of USB 3.0, the 3W has it, making it a great choice for Nextcloud hosting. So that's the good news. What's the bad news? Well, it's not exactly secret wisdom that lets you take an SoC and stick it on a PCB to create an SBC. Before I get maligned in the comments, an SoC is a system on a chip. This combines the CPU, the graphics processor, the memory controller, and input-output interfaces onto a single chip. A printed circuit board holds the SoC, memory, other input-output interfaces, and sometimes even non-volatile storage. The whole of all of this is called a single board computer. Because these components are widely available on the open market, almost anyone can make a single board computer. The problem is the lack of vendor and community tools, documentation, and other methods of support. In my Pi-hole video, I went through the process of loading Raspberry Pi OS onto an SD card and configuring it for use. It's all handled through the Raspberry Pi Imager, and it's generally a pleasant experience. Well, the process isn't as nice on the Radxa, or on most other alternatives, but it's not difficult either. If you aren't familiar with my tutorials, there's a worksheet on my website, and the link is in the video's description. You can use it as a checklist, and you can even copy and paste the console commands. Today, you're going to need a Radxa Zero 3W, a micro SD card, an SD card writer, a micro HDMI cable or adapter, a USB hub that connects with USB-C, a USB keyboard, and a USB mouse. Alright, if you have everything you need, we can start. The first thing we'll need to do is to download the operating system image for the Radxa Zero 3W. We can get it out at Radxa's page and download it to a regular PC. Unhelpfully, the file is compressed as an XZ archive, so you'll need to decompress it with something that supports the file type. Apple and Linux can do this natively, but you'll need to download a utility for Windows. I use XZ tools, but 7-zip and WinZip are probably more friendly for most. Once you've extracted the IMG file from the archive, you can delete the archive. Next, you'll use the image file to write an SD card. This will delete the contents of the SD card, so consider yourself warned. I've typically used Rufus to write my images, but I've switched to Balena Etcher because it's cross-platform and I'm trying to be more mindful of those of you that aren't using Windows as one of your PCs. So I'm trying to keep this easy, but things are going to get inconvenient here. You're going to hook up your Zero 3W to a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. We're doing this to get the Wi-Fi connection set up and to enable SSH server at boot. There are ways to do this on the SD card, so we never actually have to boot to the desktop, but it's more complicated and error-prone. Maybe that's an advanced topic for another video. Let me know. Once you've inserted the micro SD card, you can boot the device. You'll log in with the Radxa user and the password is all lowercase Radxa. When the desktop loads, you can connect to the wireless network. From there, we'll launch the Radxa configuration utility rsetup and make the connection persistent. To enable the SSH server and to make it start at boot, you will launch console, the KDE console utility. From there, you'll enter the 2 commands from the worksheet. Finally, you can update the device. You can do this from rsetup, the console directly, or see available updates discover utility on the desktop. Because I want you to deselect the GDM disable sleep component, I suggest using the desktop utility. Failure to deselect this package will break the Wi-Fi. Again, these processes aren't hard, but this is an example of some of what you can run into. The problems are tedious and potentially brittle, but they aren't hard. It does keep your neuroplasticity high and it sharpens your problem-solving skills, so there's that. It also helps if you have a dad handy to help, which I generally do in the comments, in email, or via Discord. My hope is that by showing the process, it will make the alternatives approachable enough to be considered for your projects. While it's not Raspberry Pi OS on this Radxa, it's basically the same because it's Debian, which is the base of Raspberry Pi OS in the first place. In this video, I ran through basic imaging and some light setup. Because of how I make these videos, I did it many times. Part of it is something called unhappy path testing, where I try to figure out all the ways you guys are going to break this. Well, I didn't even really need to try that hard in order to reveal just how brittle the Radxa's Debian distribution actually is. Trying to pull a package update resulted in a failed partial update, which I then repaired, except it changed the hardware tree in the process, which then made it forget that it had a Wi-Fi interface. Oops. If you're the type of person that wants to learn by poking around, these types of rough around the edges products can be fun, interesting, educational, and a great value. I mean, the Zero 3W even has NPU capabilities for really light AI inference models. I know that I'm not the best point of reference when it comes to end-user pain tolerance. After all, I've been using Unix since the late 80s, and I used to program in assembly. That may give you insight into what kind of kid I was and how I got to my present form. All that is to say, if you're trying to create a set it and forget it, bulletproof instance, this may not be a good route for some of your projects. The extra Raspberry Pi money, longevity, and sales volume means that you pay more money for a more mature product with more mature support. Over the course of my home lab videos so far, I've worked with lots of people who've tried to use AI to work through the snags that they ran into. Sometimes they had success, usually with tons of trial and error, and many times they didn't. If you get stuck when working with more esoteric hardware, you can reach out to me in the comments, or if you're a member with Discord access, you can ping me there. If you decide to try and push through on your own, just understand that your best options are forums and old-fashioned web searches. Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, and the rest are not very well equipped to help with a lot of these devices because those models are trained on available content. Relatively rare devices don't generally have a lot of content out there. And unless you're really specific with your LLM prompting, AI will do its best, but it will also inject guesses and incorrect information into its responses based on stuff that it deems close enough. That's not awesome if you're already unsure of your current status or the best way to fix it. The rule of thumb is the same as using LLMs to answer anything else. Be as complete as possible with your prompting to give yourself a better chance of not receiving back the instructional equivalent of 2 truths and a lie. Or maybe it'll be 1 truth and 50 lies. Viewers have emailed me 20-page AI conversations full of the craziest stuff. If you want to know how and why that happens, I have a video linked here. So I recorded this video because I thought it would be good to address the large universe of SBCs out there, especially in this era of escalating prices. I'd love to hear what your SBC of choice is in the comments below and why you like it. If you'd like to see a video like this demonstrating the process and considerations for loading Linux on an Intel or AMD x64 computer, let me know. It'll probably be on Ubuntu, but it's not like there are large differences based on the distribution either. I probably should have covered this earlier in the Home Lab series, but here we are. I'm still working on the Nextcloud Part 2 video and 2-camera NVR videos. They should be pretty good, but the NVR videos are way more involved than I thought they'd be. Tell me in the comments what Home Lab projects you'd like to see, and I'll try and incorporate that into my content map. If you found this video interesting or helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share with anyone else that you think should see how fascinating and sketchy AliExpress SBCs can be. If you want to support my work, please hype the video and consider becoming a member. Not a big deal, so it's really cheap. Or at least it can be. I've added a new ridiculous tier for anyone that really likes this content and wants me to produce it faster. Depending on the tier, we can hang out on Discord. So there's that. Asking for money feels weird, but these videos take a huge amount of time to make. And speaking of members, I want to thank new members on the screen for their support. Thanks, and have an inexpensive and powerful day, even if it's with a distro that looks like a Jenga tower that's already 30 moves in.